Okay, so we are continuing our football club history series. The last video we did was on Burnley Football Club, obviously founders of the Football League, and then we're going back to London with this one, and the first club from London to join the Football League. In fact, one of the oldest clubs actually in London, and that's Arsenal. Now, a lot of my friends are Arsenal fans, and some members of my family are as well. They're founded way back in 1886 by munitions workers in the Woolwich Arsenal Munitions Factory, and their first actual name was Dial Square, which was the shape of the building in the middle of the factory complex, and they changed their name to Royal Arsenal that same year in 1886. By 1893, they've taken the name Woolwich Arsenal, and they joined the Football League. By 1913, they've called themselves Arsenal Football Club, but the Suffragette Movement, now this is something that's more of a social history thing that sort of belongs on the other channel. They're going around in the 1910s using a campaign of basically terrorism for women's and civil rights, and the right to vote and trade union movement, all sorts of things the suffragettes were involved with. Now, the suffragette used violent action and suffragists used peaceful action. They also disrupt the Epsom Derby before World War One, and they are, well, a militant radical organisation, and they arson the Woolwich Arsenal Stadium, so they move to Islington. Also, financial pressures were also forcing them to move from South London to North London, and they moved to Highbury, which is near White Hart Lane, where Spurs play, and that rivalry is obviously born. Now, they're at Highbury until 2006, when they move into their brand new stadium, the Emirates, which is a fantastic stadium, which currently seats 60,704. Then a few things happen. World War One happens, and a lot of Arsenal players obviously go off to fight. And then in the mid-20s, they decide to raid the top club in England, in Huddersfield Town, and nick their manager. And that's why they get known as the Bank of England club, because they were throwing a lot of money around in the 20s and 30s. They nick Herbert Chapman as manager from the treble-winning, as in 3 league titles in a row, Huddersfield Town. They nick him from Huddersfield Town, and they bring him down to North London. Now, Huddersfield would win one more league title without Herbert Chapman, but he'd set the seeds of success in being an innovative thinker and changing the way the game was played. Huddersfield were the top side in England at the time. Arsenal were like, we want a piece of that. We've got a lot of money now with the current ownership and the current chairman pumping a lot of money in the club, and they get called the Bank of England club. Now, Herbert Chapman would die midway through the 1933-34 season of pneumonia, and died reasonably young by today's standards, but back in the 30s, being 55 was considered a pretty decent age in some of the working class communities, because life expectancy and obviously economic circumstances weren't so great in Europe at the time. We've just come out of the Great Depression, so he unfortunately dies. However, the success continues, and we'll look at their success in the 30s is a very successful period in league and cup for Arsenal Football Club. Now, also, everyone remembers Arsene Wenger's period in charge, especially the Invincible season, which has led to them being the third most successful English club ever in terms of silverware. And obviously, Arsene Wenger is the most successful manager in the FA Cup. I mean, Arsene Wenger has more trophies in the FA Cup alone than some of the clubs we've looked at with their histories in England and further afield in Europe as well. Just Arsene Wenger with his amount of trophies, and to be fair, Herbert Chapman, two of the most successful managers in the history of the game, surpassed maybe by Sir Alex Ferguson, I would think, with trophies won. And of course, that Invincible season, 2003-2004, go down in 49. I think it was 49 league games unbeaten, and they obviously win a league title without losing a game, which no one has done since. I think Nottingham Forest were the only other club to do that kind of feat, winning over 40, or not, well, being unbeaten in over 40 games. Yeah, Arsenal decided to break that record and then keep surpassing it. I think that record stays. I know Man City and Liverpool have had some very, very good seasons with some very, very good points totals. That Invincible season, I don't think gets broken, because even Man City and Liverpool managed to lose a game or two here and there in their recent league campaigns. Now, let's have a look at the silverware. There's a lot. Hell of a lot. Now, in Europe, they haven't been very successful. They have won silverware in Europe, but both the competitions they've won silverware in no longer exist. One merged into what became the UEFA Cup and now the Europa League, and one was sort of also the qualification to get into the Europa League. That trophy disappears. But they're domestic honours. They've won a lot. There's a reason why they're the third most successful English club after Liverpool and Man United. There's a reason. And they're not, in league titles, they're not actually that far behind Liverpool and Manchester United. They're 7 behind Man United, 6 behind Liverpool. So they're not that far behind. I know they haven't won the league in a while, but they're not actually that far behind. It will just take a couple of seasons. They could catch up. And I really mean that they're quite a distance ahead of the clubs below them as well. Man City has some catching up to do to get into the top 3. Let's just say that. So Division 1 titles, Herbert Chapman is the first manager to win league success with the club. And the first league title comes in the 1930-31 season. So a few years after they've nicked Herbert Chapman from Huddersfield, the success starts. And they win a couple of doubles in here. They never won the treble, but they've won a couple of league and cup doubles and a couple of cup doubles, but never a treble domestically or in Europe, such as, let's say, Manchester United or Liverpool have done. So the 1930-31 season, they win their first league title. The 32-33 season, the season Herbert Chapman dies, the 33-34 season, but the revolution has begun with the tactics that Arsenal employ. They win a lot of trophies in the 30s. So the 33-34 season is a very momentous season. Obviously, it's the passing of Herbert Chapman. But the success continues, as I say. They win it again in the 34-35 season. The 37-38 season, then obviously World War II breaks out. I honestly believe Arsenal would have dominated the 40s completely had World War II not broken out. I know Portsmouth had a bit of silverware in there as well, but I do honestly believe that Arsenal, if the Second World War doesn't happen, would probably have a lot more league trophies. I honestly believe that, because not long after war ends in 47-48, they win another league title. Then they win one in 52-53. The 60s, yeah, they don't win anything in the 60s league-wise or cup-wise. The 60s is a really down decade for Arsenal. But they get back to cup success in the 70s and with the league in 70-71, which is also a League Cup double. And then again, the 70s into the 80s draw along. Liverpool are the dominant club at this point, and it's very hard for other clubs to win silverware. Other clubs do win silverware in this period, but Arsenal are having a bit of a downtime. And then the late 80s comes along, and Liverpool's dominance is starting to waver at this point. They're still the top side, but other sides are starting to nick more trophies off Liverpool, and the league is becoming more competitive. The Premier League is looming. They win the league title in the 88-89 season, follow that up in the 1991 season. So the verge of the Premier League is coming. Obviously, Leeds will win the last old Division 1 title before the Premier League, and then obviously the Man United-Arsenal feud really begins because Wenger comes along. Now, in the 97-98 season, that's Wenger's first league title. 2001-2002, that's his second league title. And the 2003-2004 season is his third and final league title. It's the FA Cup where Arsene Wenger comes into his own as a manager, holding the record by himself. He has more FA Cups than some clubs do. So the FA Cup, 14 in total, that's a record. And again, Herbert Chapman is important for winning their first FA Cup, the 1929-30 season. So Herbert Chapman starts the success, and other managers like George Graham and Arsene Wenger continue it historically. The 35-36 season, the 49-50 season, 70-71, which is a League and Cup double. They do that a couple of times. 78-79, 92-93, they have a Cup double that year. 97-98, so this is the Wenger era now. 2001, 2002, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2013, 2014, and 2014, 2015. That's the Wenger Cups. Obviously, Unai Emery and Mikel Arteta have won silverware since Arsene Wenger has retired. 2016, 2017 is Unai Emery's FA Cup. And obviously, the most recent FA Cup is Mikel Arteta's 2019-2020 FA Cup victory. The COVID FA Cup, as I call it. So yeah, that's their record, 14 FA Cups. Obviously, Arsene Wenger, as manager, won the most of them and has the record as a manager in the FA Cup. The trophy domestically that I am surprised they've won the least is the League Cup, with only 2 League Cups to their name, which is what I find really, really stunning, is that lack of League Cup success, considering their FA Cup and domestic league success. They've only won it twice, the 86-87 season and the 92-93 season are their only League Cups to date, which I find kind of stunning. The Charity Shield, or Community Shield as it is now known, they've won 16 times, and they win this a lot in the 30s. So this is where the Herbert Chapman silverware kicks in, and there's also, you can see where the Wenger era as well, the imprint on the team. They win it in 1930, 1931, 1933, 1934, 1938, 1948, 1953. Then there's a lengthy gap. 91, 98, 99, so now we're in the Wenger era. 2002, 2004, 2014, 2015, 2017 and 2020. Now the 2 European trophies they've won that are basically now what you would call the UEFA Cup, Europa League kind of. If you won domestic cup competition, you go into what is now Europa League qualifying, and the Intercities Fairs Cup, should I say, became the UEFA Cup, which became the Europa League with rebranding. So basically, these cups are defunct, but they have become basically what is now the Europa League for qualification purposes to get into that competition. They win the Cup Winners' Cup in the 93-94 season, and obviously the Intercities Fairs Cup 69-70 season. So they won 2 European titles. There have been some other European finals. Most recently, obviously, the Champions League final in 2006 against Barcelona. They played the majority of that game with 10 men after Jens Lehmann was sent off. Obviously, Manuel Almunia goes in goal. Sol Campbell scored the goal for Arsenal. Belletti scored the winner for Barcelona. That's not long before his transfer to Chelsea, the Brazilian wing-back. And, of course, that's the beginning of the tiki-taka kind of era of Spanish and European football. Now, obviously, their biggest rivals are Spurs because of the geographical location of what is now the Emirates, formerly of Highbury and White Hart Lane. And, of course, the Manchester United rivalry in the 90s and the 2000s was a rivalry between personalities. You had Vieira as captain of Arsenal. You had Roy Keane as captain of Man United. You had Alex Ferguson at Man United. You had Wenger at Arsenal. That was a heated rivalry, with a fair bit of hate spiced in there. You know, you got the Pizzagate with their lobby, they're fighting in the tunnel, some of the challenges on the field. That was possibly the biggest rivalry I had, possibly the best rivalry the English game has seen in the modern era, in my opinion. That was ultimate hatred between players. I think it was a rivalry between the managers that, now that they both retired, they actually get on really, really well, which is ironic. When Ferguson retired, obviously, Wenger was still managing Arsenal. And when Wenger retired, Sir Alex Ferguson came onto the touchline. It was an Arsenal-Man United. It was the last time I think Arsenal-Man United were going to play each other. Wenger had announced at the end of that season he was retiring. And Sir Alex Ferguson awarded Wenger a special long service award medal, and they had a little pre-match presentation. And both sets of players formed a guard of honour. Wenger and Ferguson changed the modern game. And Herbert Chapman, I have to do a video on him, with Huddersfield and with Arsenal, changed the game in the 20s and the 30s with some really innovative tactics, like putting numbers on the back of shirts. That wasn't a thing before Herbert Chapman. He was like, we're putting numbers on the back of our shirts. I want to know where my players are on the pitch. He also brought floodlights to Highbury. I think he also brought floodlights to Huddersfield Town as well. He was very keen on modernising the game, thinking outside the box and being different. So putting numbers on shirts, you know, that's every club does that now. He was one of the first managers to say, we're doing this. So I'll do a video on Herbert Chapman and his success at both Huddersfield and at Arsenal. And of course, Wenger. We can look at the managerial career of Arsene Wenger, not just in England, but in France as well, because he had a very good career in France before he becomes Arsenal manager, and hear how he changed the game. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. A slightly longer history video because Arsenal, as I say, deserve a little bit more looking at. I could have got into some of the records, I really could have, but I decided to look at the Silverware one and those key moments in the history, so the formation, the name changes, the move from the south of London to North London, and then 2 key managers, Herbert Chapman and Arsene Wenger. I think Herbert Chapman, is more important on the direction that not only the English game, but the sport in general takes. The use of floodlights and numbers back then was revolutionary. Now is, well, that's a standard practice, right? If your stadium doesn't have floodlights, you don't meet your UEFA standards, for example. Don't have names and numbers on the back of the shirts, you're seen as backward and not. Yeah, Herbert Chapman, really important. And some of the formations he used were revolutionary as well. That completely changed how the game was played, hence why he was so successful. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more content for you very, very soon.